Hi, and welcome to Conversations with the Candidates. With the League of Women Voters of Houston, I'm Gene Preuss. We're here at Houston Media Source TV studios, and tonight we're going to interview Ed Gonzalez, sheriff, and also the Democratic candidate for sheriff for Harris County coming up in the election on Tuesday, Super Tuesday, which is in just a couple of weeks. And also, because she happened to be in the area, we have Natalia Cornelio, who is running for district judge, also on the Democratic ticket. And we will open up I will extend an invitation to other candidates. You just happen to be here, and so that's why we asked you. And I'll ask some of your opponents we try to be bipartisan here at the League of Women Voters, and so I will also ask your candidates, so not to seem to give you an unfair advantage. So thank you both for being here with us tonight, and we're going to ask you some questions so we can have some good responses from you so that we can inform our voters, because we do want an informed electorate. And Sheriff, we're going to start with you. Tell us about yourself and why you're running for Harris County Sheriff again.
Well, first, thanks for having me, and greatly appreciate the work that the League of Women Voters does and raising awareness and making sure that there is an informed citizenry. I'm running for sheriff once again. It's been my honor of a lifetime to be able to serve here in my hometown as sheriff. I'm the 30th sheriff, and I run the third largest sheriff's office in the country and the largest in the state of Texas. I came in with an idea that we could improve and create a more effective criminal justice system that looks out for victims, for survivors, but also to make sure that we're providing due process and fairness at those that come before the system. It's one of the fundamental bedrocks of our society is innocent until proven guilty, and we've got to make sure that we're being smart with the dollars that we have and understanding that the vast majority of individuals that enter our criminal justice system are going to return back into the community, and we have to be smart about how we try to reduce recidivism, how we make sure that we're preventing future individuals from entering into our justice system at some point, and at the same time making sure that we're keeping the community safe. So I would like another opportunity to continue the work that we've done already, and I would be honored to have the people's support.
So one of the things that I've heard you speak about before is recidivism rates. You're very concerned about that. You also have been concerned about jail overcrowding. So what are some of the issues that you see as the big issues that you've faced and that you want to continue addressing?
In my opinion, in law enforcement today, we're in the front lines of three very important issues: mental illness, addiction, and poverty. And I think it's important for law enforcement to perhaps have a role, but we do not need to be in the front lines of those issues. It's very costly to try to resolve those issues in a bureaucracy that's a jail. And it many times does not necessarily keep us safe. And so we've got to get away from that notion that simply incarcerating someone makes us safer. We've got to look at evidence-based practices, follow the research, and make sure that we're deploying resources in a smart way. Many don't know that I operate the largest mental health hospital in the state. 25% of our jail population is at least on one psychotropic medication. When you look at the state prison system, upon release, about 70% are going to reoffend again because no one wants to hire them, no one wants to rent to them, for example, so housing becomes an issue. So about 70% are going to reoffend within 36 months. And with our population as well, about 70% of the individuals that are currently, the men and women that are in the Harris County Jail, we have approximately 9,000 right now on any given day. 70% of them are pretrial detainees, meaning that we're dealing with the pretrial phase of a case. And so many don't realize that. And also here in Harris County, 90,000 children every year have a parent that's incarcerated in our jail. So that's impacting the future success of those children. Many times because of the stigma of arrest are going to end up falling into a criminal justice system that we're going to have to continue to support. And I would rather redeploy it in a way where we could provide better outcomes. That's a workforce issue. It's an issue of safety. So that's a lot of the work that I've done. We've been proactive. We've implemented some programs that have been successful, and at the same time making sure that we're doing it in a prudent, responsible way that bears better outcomes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I want to go to our other guest. So, Miss Cornelio, tell us a little about yourself and why you're running.
Absolutely. So I'm Natalia Cornelio. I'm running for the 351st. It's one of our criminal district courts, and it's one of 22 felony courts that serves all of Harris County. Any felony is going to come to one of those courts from Harris County. I'm running because our courts, they are the mecca of our justice system in terms of the public's confidence in it. In the decisions made by our courts are, the heart of whether the community trusts the justice system. And so I want to bring my experience to the courts and really lift up and offer what I have, which is an exceptional ability to apply the law, to always respect and follow the Constitution, and to apply the law meaningfully as it pertains to the people before the courts. Our justice system has a tremendous impact on thousands of lives, not just defendants and victims and witnesses, but communities affected by their decisions. And my background is as a federal public defender and a civil rights lawyer. So I have always served communities that are directly impacted by our criminal justice system. And I want to bring my experience of having done that to the consciousness of the people that are making decisions that impact the community and justice.
So let's talk a little bit about background, and we'll start here.
Yeah.
Would you tell us a little bit about your background? You say you are an attorney right now, so tell us a little bit about who you are,
Sure.
and your background, and why, and your qualifications.
Sure. Well, so first of all, I'm a proud Mexican-American, bilingual, Latina attorney. We're only 8% of the entire bar here in Harris County. I went to the University of Chicago Law School and clerked for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, where I did criminal and immigration and habeas corpus cases. And after that, I was at the Federal Public Defender's Office here in Houston and represented people facing serious felonies in federal court, facing life sentences in some cases, facing mandatory minimums. In one case, a 23-year-old facing a mandatory minimum of 57 years in prison. And I learned in that experience how the justice system works and the importance of our judges. And I also learned the experience of the people that go through the system and had to advise them so that they can make the decision that was best for them in their legal case. 3 years ago, I became the director of criminal justice reform at the Texas Civil Rights Project, which is a civil rights litigation nonprofit. And we did civil litigation across the state with respect to the justice system. We have sued the prison, Texas TDCJ. We sued a city, El Paso actually, where I have family, for having a debtor's prison where they were incarcerating people based on unpaid parking tickets. And the people couldn't pay their tickets. What the city said was you can pay it off or you can pay it off with jail time. We sued because that basically criminalizes poverty, and we forced that city to change their policy. And I was most recently involved in helping draft and finalize the misdemeanor bail reform settlement agreement, which is a big lawsuit against Harris County. We had for years been detaining people before their trial based on being unable to pay hundreds of dollars. And the lawsuit and the settlement is forcing us to change away from that practice.
So how do you see yourself having been on some civil rights issues if you are going to be a judge passing judgment on criminals or people accused of criminality?
Sure. I mean, I think being a litigator in the civil space and federal court, you learn that your integrity is impeccable and knowledge of the law is critical. So ultimately, the responsibility is to apply the law. What I think is crucial about my background as a civil rights lawyer is that I recognize that the Constitution is law too. And I think that sometimes our judges succumb to political pressure or for whatever reason, the consideration of rights is not even present. So I think that what I'm going to be able to do as a judge is always apply the law, exactly what the law is, and take into account the role that a person's right plays in the equation. It's always going to be a balance, but it should always be part of the equation. So that's what I think a healthy balance of knowing what the people go through, knowing about people's rights, and then also knowing all of the other laws that do need to be applied.
So Ed, let me get you to talk a little bit about your background as well. Where are you from and why do you want to be sheriff? What is your expertise?
Well, I'm a native Houstonian. Grew up primarily in the near north side area, and eventually we moved to the Greater Heights area before it was the Heights as we know it now. First in my family to graduate from college. I was inspired by my father that couldn't read and write, and I understood early the importance of education and them supporting me in pursuing my own education and understanding that education is a great equalizer. And so I was the first in my family to pursue college. I went to the University of Houston downtown, and that's when I had the aha moment for me. I met a Houston police officer who I still know, and he inspired me to perhaps meet my passion by becoming a police officer. And so I served with the Houston Police Department proudly for almost 20 years in that role. Eventually, I wanted to pursue the public policy space and went and served 3 full terms as a city council member for District H, the neighborhood in which I grew up in, also serving as Mayor Pro Tem under Mayor Parker, where I led important initiatives such as helping draft the first wage theft ordinance, launching with Project Grad, Cafe College Houston, for example, launching the City of Houston's Sobering Center as well, where we could divert low-level public intoxication cases, reduce costs, create more effective outcomes. And so I was able to really develop a skill set for developing policy, and by being Mayor Pro Tem, having a hand on helping assist with a $5 billion budget and over 20,000 employees as a city. So it was a great learning experience, learning next to Mayor Parker and my colleagues. Eventually was able to complete my 3 full terms, and then I pursued what was basically a vacant seat at the sheriff's office in 2016. I was elected and been serving proudly ever since. The community knows me. I'm a hands-on sheriff. Most times you're going to know me or see me in uniform because I'm out there taking care of the community. That's my number one priority, is public safety. So most times I'm going to be out in the field seeing firsthand what's going on, how we need to serve our community better, and how we can make sure that we're being effective at what we do. I want to be an effective police executive, and I think I've done that. I've been hands-on, whether it be Hurricane Harvey, whether it be natural disasters or man-made disasters. I'm always on the front, leading from the front and not pushing from the back, and that's why I want to continue to serve as a Harris County Sheriff.
One of the things that I've noticed about you is that you are, when there is a natural disaster or something that first responders are at, Sheriff Gonzalez is always there. It seems like that takes, I mean, you are very, as you say, being at the forefront and leading from the front, but how do you reconcile that time commitment and staffing? Is the sheriff's office well staffed now? What about the resources that you have available to you?
We could always use more. I think any large agency, we cover 1,700 square miles. We're trying to tackle a lot of big issues in our community, like domestic violence. You know, I've been very vocal about, the need to support VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, and other important legislation that needs to continue to be supported. But we are well staffed, but we could always use more resources. I recently advocated to get more. One of the things I'm trying to be a leader on is, and we actually did already, was create a regional task force to tackle some of the fatal crashes that we're seeing, the impaired drivers in our region. We lead the country. We want to reduce that. In unincorporated Harris County, under the leadership of my team and I, last year we saw a 16% reduction in fatal crashes. And so one is way too many, but we're really trying to make a dent, and we're bringing more people under the tent. We believe in a multidisciplinary approach. We're bringing doctors, traffic engineers, law enforcement, schools, and others to really create a better driving culture, as well as trying to see how we could better reduce some of the infrastructure needs and how they could sometimes contribute to accidents. When I was on city council, I was a big proponent for complete streets design, where we consider all users of the roadway. And so, we could always use more, but we're also smart and effective with the resources we have. Just completing my 3rd budget, managed it, coming in under budget as well. So I know how to run a large organization. It's like a large corporation. And so we could always use more, because we want to also deploy more. It's not necessarily about more arrests or citations or anything. It's about community-based, community-centric, evidence-based practices focused on harm reduction. We're providing medically assisted treatment to those that come into our jail system with addictions, so that when they come out, hopefully they could be better prepared, because we know there's a high propensity for overdose upon release if they've been on drugs, and then they're going to come out, consume again. So we're trying to meet them where they're at and be practical. Working with families to support that individual, strengthen the continuum of care, so that when there's not fragmented processes and individuals end up cycling back through a criminal justice system and reoffending again. And so we're tackling a lot of these issues. And so we could always use more resources, but it's not necessarily having more, it's being effective with the resources that you do have.
What is the biggest challenge that you have faced? I mean, you've had Harvey, you've had others. What is the biggest challenge that you have faced? Law enforcement recently has seen a lot of criticism. I mean, it always does in various news cycles, but there have been some criticisms of law enforcement here in the Houston area and how it's been carried out. What are some of the challenges that you've seen?
Well, I think we're always trying to be in the forefront of being very community oriented. I hope that through my public service, again, I'm not a stranger to the public, that they know that I serve with integrity. I'm a hard worker, that, as we mentioned, I'm hands-on. I can get the job done, and they could sleep well at night knowing that I'm going to be on top of things for them. I've got a proven track record in every position that I've ever held. I've been a police officer, I've been a detective, I've been a hostage negotiator, I've been a city councilman, mayor pro tem, and sheriff. I'm uniquely qualified to lead this agency and to be the chief law enforcement officer in our county. And so I want to continue to do that job and make sure that that we're constantly earning that trust. We have to earn it every day. The patch that we wear on our uniform, that we proudly wear, says the pride of Texas, but that's something that we have to earn every single day. 9 times out of 10, we're going to get it right. Sometimes we're not. When we do, we own up to it. We're transparent. We don't hide behind, messages that aren't direct to the community. And I think we've been able to navigate tough situations because there's a level of trust and respect with the community that says, we know that it may not be easy, but he's going to do the right thing. Let's be patient. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt. And so we've been able to do that. And so we're going to continue to do that. Look, it's a tough profession, but we're going to tackle things head on, be a leader. And I think that hopefully that resonates with people to know that I'm out there in the front lines caring about what's going on.
Thank you. So as far as as a judge candidate, as a judge, judges have recently come under a lot of criticism here in this area for lowering bonds. And law enforcement has been critical of that effort. So how do you see your role as a judge candidate, somebody for that position? How do you see your role in addressing concerns that the public has about recidivism rates or letting people out? How can you address that?
Sure. That's an important question because we have the same goal, right? As a judge, as a citizen, as a candidate, as law enforcement, we want the community to be safe. We want the law to be followed. We want people's rights to be protected. So I think that the goal is just to do it as smartly as possible. Be knowledgeable, stay learning, know the law, know the Constitution, balance the interests, but consider as much information as you can to make the right decision. So I think that some of the siege that judges can be under lately is misinformation in terms of why things are happening. And the topic of the debate is money, is whether how much money you have to pay to get out of jail means that we're safe or not as a community. And I think that the evidence in the misdemeanor bail lawsuit and in other cases has shown that there's not a correlation. So I do think it's important for anyone as a leader, candidates, judges, sheriff, anybody, to make sure that we are not misinforming the people and sharing the knowledge that we do have. As a judge, the obligation is always to follow the law, to apply it, to consider it in the case, and to consider the Constitution. But the information that you're using, that you're basing that on, is important. So in the misdemeanor case, for example, there was no evidence that paying $100 or $500 to a bail bondsman had any correlation to safety or court appearances. And so that's the ultimate question. And right now, I think judges might feel pressure to detain more people than are necessary because there is misinformation about what happens when people are out on bond and whether it's money or not. The reality is a lot of people right now, I think 2,000 people are in the jail on a $10,000 bond or less, which means if they had $1,000, they would be out. And the evidence is consistently showing that that won't determine safety or not, right? Whether somebody can pay $1,000 or not will not show whether something will not happen or not based on that. It's other factors. So I think it's incumbent upon our judges to be informed and know and consider risk more appropriately, more intelligently, and not in a political, heated, frontline news way.
So speaking of education, so one of the goals of the League of Women Voters and the conversations with the candidate shows is to educate voters. We want to help the electorate know the issues and know the. Oftentimes, judges are way down ballot.
Yes.
And people, we see the people who are on TV all the time. We see the high-profile candidates, and judges don't really seem to be that well known, and they're just like, well, afterthoughts, or I'll just push this button. Or sometimes people even leave them blank. What do people need to know about the role? Because we try to think of judges as impartial. Maybe we see them. A judge on Law and Order or some TV show, and that's really the only, unless we've had interactions with them, that's the only, that's our perception. So what do they need to know? What do voters need to know about your role?
I think a person's track record, right, will say something about what type of judge they either are or would be. It's a tough question. But it's an important question. I mean, right now our judges are, I think, in the district court criminal level are all Democrats. And a little bit of research will teach a lot about them. And then similarly with the candidates. That's a hard question.
But it is, and I know a lot of times, and I hear this from friends, is that they go, well, judges, I just vote for whomever. And maybe that works, but it seems to me that if we can learn more about it, we should. But it's a different. It's not really supposed to be a political position, right?
Right. I mean, and so I'm working really hard to reach as many voters as possible so that they know about me, and hopefully that will be what they. I'm sharing the information that I think that they need to know, right? In terms of what do I think about bail, right? Or the history of our bail practices, or what do I think about the Constitution as being law and the importance of it, or how important is it for a judge to have actually represented people that they might be sentencing, or having in their court as witnesses. I think that those are it's incumbent upon us and our community to sort of educate ourselves and each other and highlight what the job is. So for our criminal courts, our judges are responsible for presiding over trials, but also bail decisions, sentencing decisions, and then things that are not even a decision in the court, but affect everybody. Courtroom procedures, case management, right? How often are people coming to court where nothing happens and then they don't go to their job that day because of that? Appointment of counsel in criminal cases. Judges are responsible for that. And so what is a judge, a candidate, what's their position on that? What do they think is important in that type of decision? It's a long process because it's a lot to teach about what it is and about what we're about at the same time, but we're doing the best that we can. And I think that it's important for people that are judges to be out there making sure that they're always informing people about what they do and what's happening in the courts.
So let me get an insider's view. You are an attorney,
correct?
Right. So you've argued before the bench, right? You have been before judges. What is the ideal attorney's judge like?
Open-minded and capable of compassion and smart. But I think that, a lot of times we know that a judge has made up their mind before we get there. And that makes the process feel unfair. Other times, the judges can be hostile to our clients and express disdain. So that also makes us not trust that judge's decisions. And other times we'll make legal arguments and you're like, did they read that? Did they get that? And so I think that those are the three corners of what as an attorney we want. We want compassion, open-mindedness, and ability to understand the law and arguments that we make.
Thank you very much. So, Sheriff Gonzalez, as a law enforcement person, you've been in HPD, you've been in the Sheriff's Department, and you've been on City Council too. But so oftentimes, maybe in public's perception, maybe this isn't the case, but it seems that sometimes law enforcement is standing here trying to do something, and oftentimes people may perceive, or there's a perception that the legal system, the justice system, aren't on the same page. How do you see that? I know that you've worked with a lot of different judges, and so how do you get beyond those times where you may not see eye to eye?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that it's an important friction sometimes that does exist because we're the ones that kind of go and collect the evidence, try to present forward, the elements of a case that then will be proven through, hopefully, what we hope is a successful prosecution. But we know that it's important that everyone trusts that system, not only those that are victims in a crime, but also those that are accused, because the victim one day may become an accused someday, or we may have family members, and we would want it to be a fair system for everyone. And to me, I believe in just fundamental fairness for everyone. And so if there's sufficient evidence to support that a crime occurred and the evidence is solid, then I would hope that there is a level of accountability, because we need to protect the community at large. And if not, why have the rule of law, so to speak? Let's just rule by lawlessness. And so I think there's an important role. I respect the role of judges. It's a matter of respect. But we also, in the broader issue, I think for me, the 30,000-foot view is we can't look at things in a vacuum. We've got to understand that we operate within the criminal justice system. And I think that fundamentally, we just want to make sure that that system is working for everybody. The victims of crime as well as the accused, because it's important. It's one of the bedrocks of our democracy, and we want to make sure that everyone can feel comfortable that there is a process that works, that's effective, that's efficient. Right now I'm fighting some efficiencies that I'm seeing within our own system, not mine, but our criminal justice system, that need to be better. We need to do better. The public expects better. And so that's something that I think is important. And so I think we all have an important role, and I think that we're all trying to make sure that we're doing our part to make sure that we're leading effectively to create the best outcomes.
One of the questions that has come up recently, I'm going to ask you both to comment on this because you said that you actually brought it up, and I know you also have other insight onto this too. So a few years ago, Proposition 287G was a big issue, and how law enforcement was going to respond to issues of people who were not here legally, or people who had overstayed their visas, or there was undocumented of some sort, and there was concern about that. And we still, that has come back up again recently with people saying that higher up officials upset about what they call sanctuary cities. How do you respond to that? We'll start with you, Sheriff.
I posted something in my social media account that I felt it was misguided. For me, I think we need to get away from the negative rhetoric, the demonizing of any community. Look, we're on the front lines of law enforcement. Our job, our role is to protect everyone. I'm a strong proponent for comprehensive immigration reform. It hasn't been achieved yet. I think it's disappointment that we haven't seen that at the federal level. With that said, we're local law enforcement officials. We respect the rule of law. At the time, I testified against SB 4. I didn't think or see it as good public policy based on my experience. I joined others like our police chief, Art Acevedo, as well. I just think, again, that it's not good public policy. We need everyone's participation in the process, and it easily creates a target on some communities to say, well, we could go target that community because they're going to be afraid to come forward. They're going to be afraid to report domestic violence, sexual assault, things that we see every day. And so we need their participation as witnesses, perhaps to help somebody else from becoming a victim. At the same time, I can't pick and choose the laws that I'm going to have to enforce. As before, we went through the process. I testified against it. It passed. It's a rule of law. And our understanding is we still have to comply in certain areas with it, and we do. We're not going to be, there's a place to advocate, but I'm also not an activist per se in my role where I have to protect everyone. I wish that other segments of the process could create or enact more change, but I think that in our role, we're going to do everything we can to understand that we work in a diverse community. I don't like the negative rhetoric of this is a sanctuary city. We are not. Nobody gets a free pass here. If somebody commits a crime, we're going to target you because you committed a crime. Our goal is to charge you criminally. That's our focus, is criminally charged. That's what we operate. And so, as far as somebody else having resources, then that's somebody else's responsibility. But I'm not out here to go and raid businesses because somebody may not have the right documentation or to be racial profiling anyone. I don't think that's effective policing at the local level. And so, I'm sensitive to that. And so we've been able to work through it. We've done an effective job with it. I think it's a shame that in this era that as national leaders cannot have a thoughtful, sophisticated conversation about immigration. We are kidding ourselves if we don't understand the importance of our neighbors to the south in Mexico. We should have a North American strategy between Mexico, United States, and Canada to compete with the global economy. 22 states depend on Mexico as its number one or number two trade partner. 75,000 trucks cross the U.S.-Mexico border every day. More than $1 billion of legal trade occur every single day. We need leaders that will focus on issues of energy reforms that could exist between both countries, trade, how to use technology, 21st century technology like gamma ray technology to look at some of those trucks and trade to make sure that illegal goods aren't being crossed. Not walls. To me, that's antiquated kind of response that doesn't really solve a problem. Create, again, comprehensive immigration reform, but we ought to talk about water policy along the colonias, along the border. We ought to be talking about how do we, develop that North American strategy. We should be talking about those things. What's the offshore technology with oil in the Gulf of Mexico? All these are things that are critically important. But Democrats and Republicans have always been able to work together with Mexico. And so it's a shame that we demonize people, call people by name and all that. I think let's get informed. Let's be smart. And it's unfortunate we don't have that. And it travels downstream to where we as local officials get caught up in that, having to explain to a community it's okay to participate and you're not going to be deported simply by reporting a crime.
Okay, thank you. What about on the judicial side?
Yeah, from the court's perspective, I mean, the whole integrity of the outcome of a court is based on the integrity of the process. I mean, so that means that in the context of immigration, it's just making sure that everyone has equal justice under the law and that the procedures and the processes that the court's going to follow or have available for people allows that outcome of what happens in there to be fair and just and equal. So I think, it's hard to give too many examples, but we want to make sure that people are fairly able to testify, fairly able to have their rights as an accused person, Sixth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, right to be present, right to not speak on their behalf, and then, same for victims. And I think that the responsibility of the court is to just make sure that that process has integrity so that whatever the solution is, we know that, everybody got to share their part. The judge got to hear both sides or all of the evidence, and that was what was protected, so that the outcome we can have confidence in.
So one of the things that I kind of hear both of you saying, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong here, but one of the issues is fairness, as you're saying, and balancing the needs between um, protecting communities, and a lot of times poor communities or minority communities and some of these underserved communities have not historically been well policed. There's news recently about some delivery drivers not wanting to go into certain neighborhoods, but this has been a historic problem that a lot of communities have faced, is that people don't want to, go into those neighborhoods, so they don't have banks, they don't have adequate food, services and grocery stores. But policing has been one of those issues as well. And this has been one of the. I know I've heard you speak about this before. Is that if it looks like you're targeting community, they're not going to be responsive to policing in that community when they need to be, because then they become victims. Right. So it is hard to juggle that, right? So that is a tremendous thing. And the other thing you brought up earlier is flooding. And we're seeing more. I'm kind of sarcastically joke. It's like it seems like now every time it rains, we have a flood in Houston. But we are seeing some of these issues. And how is the sheriff's department responding to, as first responders? How are you responding to these increased numbers of challenging situations that you're in?
Yeah, well, we're definitely, it's definitely challenging, so it's something that we're always evolving in our training, in looking at our approaches to how we respond to certain critical incidents in a area as diverse commercially, as the greater Houston-Harris County region is. 25% of the nation's economy flows through Houston-Harris County, so a well-placed attack here would decimate our economy. We've seen flooding, as you mentioned. So to me, I look at it from a broader perspective, having been on city council, having dealt with local flooding issues. I'm glad to see that the county is really being proactive with County Judge Hidalgo and the county commissioners to really try to come up with a comprehensive plan that works, making good use of the dollars that have been allocated towards this, knowing as well that it needs a regional approach as well. We need to make sure that that there's no silos between city, having come from city government. I know that sometimes we're looking at the local issues, not knowing that what's happening north towards south and how the water flows is going to impact flooding in the Houston area. So making sure that there's more opportunities. I know Commissioner Ellis recently launched some infrastructure projects in collaboration with the city of Houston, for example. So we need to make sure we're taking a comprehensive approach of this, looking at some of the building codes as well. I was a big proponent as well for making sure that we were trying to utilize more paving that would absorb waters better instead of just paving everything to death, creating a lot of roadways and runoff and things like that. One of the things that we're seeing, and it's a double-edged sword, we've seen tremendous growth in our region, but with that growth, we haven't seen the infrastructure keep up. And some communities have very adequate infrastructure, and those communities are often the more neglected ones. So eventually you see a lot of gentrification where a lot of new development comes out, pushes people that have raised families in those communities but no longer can afford it. So it really, a lot of other issues are coming about because of that. And for us, it's a personal safety, a public safety issue for my deputies that are out there in the front lines. I worry when there's some flooding and they're the ones out there responding. We're out there responding. And so we've also deployed now more boat apparatus that we've gathered post-Harvey to make sure that we can also deploy, because we wear many different hats. And so we want to make sure that we have as many tools as possible. So any type of incident, we're prepared to respond. And I think and I hope that our residents are happy with the response that we did in trying to protect and save lives and property during either Hurricane Harvey or incidents at some of the chemical plants or things that have happened, that we've always been there to serve and protect.
Well, I think we've lost first responders. and they're always, rushing in where angels fear to tread, as it were, and that's very difficult. And how does this, as the sheriff, when you're responsible, how many deputies do you oversee?
Well, combined personnel between deputy civilians and corrections officers, we have approximately 5,000 teammates on any given day.
Now you can't know everybody. Well, maybe you can, but that's a lot of people to know. But how do you respond, and how do you see yourself interacting with each of those 5,000 people? Sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes they put their lives at risk. And you had mentioned earlier that this is very difficult. How do you see your role in dealing with all 5,000 people?
Yeah, well, I care deeply for my teammates. I refer to all of them as teammates. And to me, it could be the frontline person that's helping us with janitorial services, to members of my command staff, to our corrections staff, administrative, dispatchers, frontline deputies, and others. They're all critically important to the work that we do. It's a tall task. I'm very, very pro-police because having served in the front lines, I know the sacrifices that come with the job. And it's something that I pray for them every day. I've had to inform family members when we just buried another deputy this week, died from natural causes, but whether it be natural causes, illness, or shot in the line of duty, shot and killed, it just breaks your heart because they're a part of you. We're a family, and we have that load on our shoulders when we wear that uniform, that it's a heavy burden to carry. It's a heavy badge to wear. But we serve proudly, and I worry about my teammates, but I try to be approachable. That's one of my parts of my brand, is to always be approachable to my constituents, to my teammates as well. Trying to be there as well for them. We've developed a wellness unit. We've hired our first psychologist ever, so that we could also look over the mental health and wellness of our own workforce, because sometimes we're so worried serving others that we neglect ourselves. More law enforcement officers have been lost in the last couple of years due to suicide than other type of attacks or anything. So it's something that I worry about. I worry about the psyche sometimes of responding. We're normal people that see abnormal things every single day. And our profession, as well as our communities, suffer from trauma. The loss of life, the carnage, the responding to mass shootings, responding to traumatic stuff. The community sees that as well, and there's no healing that takes place sometimes. And it's concerning, but I just try to be there for them, try to lead from the front and not push from the back.
What centers you?
My faith and humbleness. I was talking earlier about it's just my upbringing. Thank God for the parents that I had that loved and support me. We're humble individuals, but taught me to always be proud of my roots, my background, my culture, my last name, bilingual. Never forget where I came from, and to serve with integrity, with respect. I'm true public servant at heart. What you see is what you get. It's not anything, some fabrication or some public image, and I'm different away from it. I truly love to serve, and I want to continue to serve our Harris County residents for a second term.
So we have just a few more minutes left, and I want to ask each of you the same question. That's the question we always ask all of our candidates. Why are you the best candidate for your position, and how can voters learn more about you and your campaign? So we'll start with you.
So I'm Natalia Cornelio, and I'm the best candidate for this position because I will demonstrate an exceptional understanding and knowledge of the law. I will always respect people's rights, and I will be thoughtful about applying the law to the facts of the people that are impacted by my decisions. I will carry myself with the utmost integrity to leave something behind to the people that come after me, and I will continue to always learn and become better and work really hard to be your judge of the 351st District Court. You can learn more about me on my website, www.nataliacornelio.com.
Okay, let me. We have we have it up on the screen, but let's spell it out because sometimes it's lost in translation.
NATALIACORNELIO.com.
.com. Oh,
Booth.com.
all right, thank you. Sheriff Ed, let me ask you the same question. Why are you the best candidate for the position, Harris County Sheriff? And how can people learn more about your campaign?
Thank you, Gene. I'm the best candidate because I'm currently serving as your sheriff. You know me. I'm a known leader that's out there in the front lines. I'm already working for you. I would be blessed to have your vote once again. I've served you well in many capacities, but most recently as sheriff, and I want to serve a second term to make sure that we're continuing the progress already done. I'm battle tested. I'm results oriented. I get things done. I'm a hands-on sheriff that cares about your safety, that will work every day to make sure we're keeping you safe, that we're being smart about the strategies that we do in doing so. And I would be very honored if you voted for me once again. Your sheriff, Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez. You can learn more about me through my website at edgonzalez.com. I'm also very engaged in social media. I was an early adopter of it because I communicate directly with my constituents, letting you know what's happening, when it's happening, where, and I'm out there many times myself. You could follow me on Twitter at sheriff_Ed_HCSO, or on Facebook at Ed Gonzalez Houston. Please consider me Ed Gonzalez. I would love to be your Harris County Sheriff for a second term.
Thank you both very much. Natalia Cornelio for 351st District Judge, Ed Gonzalez for Sheriff. I want to thank you both for coming out tonight to the League of Women Voters Conversations with the Candidates here on Houston Media Source TV and answering the questions. And we just kind of pulled you in.
It was great.
And thank you. And we'll reach out to your opponents as well. It does sound like a harsh term, but I mean, it's not like you're going to fight them. But the other people running, we will reach out to them too. If you'd like to learn more about the League of Women Voters of Houston, please go to our website, lwvhouston.org. And since you brought up social media, we're very active on social media. We have a Facebook page, also LWV Houston, where in a few days we will post this. If you're watching us on Facebook Live, the video will continue to be up. Please share it with your friends so that they can be informed about the races we've had tonight as well. Our next show is next week, next Wednesday, February 26th, right before the election. We'll have Democratic candidates for Harris County Attorney and Tax Assessor Collector on the show. Also, Harris County Commissioner Precinct 1 will be invited. On our shows, we open the doors to all the candidates in a particular race who can attend. We have shows for candidates from both sides. Now, not every candidate can make it because they have other obligations. This is crunch time, right? Because the primaries are coming up in the first week of March. So I know you all have very busy schedules, and thank you very much for being on the show and taking the time out to help us educate voters in the Houston area. For the League of Women Voters of the Houston area, I'm Gene Preuss. Thank you very much.